Is there really much of a gap between the Brewers and Cardinals as we're here in the offseason? Both teams trying to get better in the offseason. JD Hafron, Locked on Cardinals, joins us next.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yeah, I'm still disgusted that Murphy did not sweep the Manager of the Year unanimously last night, but we'll talk to JD about that coming up here in a little bit. The Brewers and St. Louis Cardinals, well, the Brewers think the Cardinals are rivals. The rivals think the Cubs are their rivals. In any case, they're all trying to chase the Milwaukee Brewers down, but as we know, even though the Brewers have won the division, that things can change in a hurry. Good to have you along. My name is Chuck Freimund, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your purchase. That is Gametime. JD Hafron joining us right now. JD, Locked On Cardinals. Good to have you along, my friend.
How are you, Chuck? Good to see you again. Happy offseason to you, and congratulations to your manager. Well-deserved.
Yeah, 27 votes there. A couple of people did not vote for him. I see a couple of people voted for, one guy voted for Marmol for third place. We'll get to that coming up later on. I want to see what you think of that.
It wasn't me. I promise you.
It wasn't me. I don't have a vote. I'm not a baseball writer. So, JD, off-season's been quiet for both teams so far.
Yeah, we've got we're in a bit of a different area than we're used to as Cardinal fans, because this is a year where we're not actively out shopping for any big name free agents or actually trying to add really anybody of any veterans or anything like that to the roster as of right now. Obviously things can change. We're actually in a reset is what we're calling it, where they want to rely more on some of the youth in the organization as opposed to the veterans, which they've turned to over many, many years, where like each year it was kind of like, oh, we'll add this veteran, and I kind of, the way I've described it is, you see the old cartoons where there's a hole like in a dam or something, or in a boat, and they put a finger in and plug the hole and another one pops out. And that's kind of what the Cardinals have been doing, is they've been trying to plug holes for the last couple of years, and it hasn't gotten them anywhere. So they're deciding, like, look, we're just let's just start this thing fresh. We'll try to decrease payroll a little bit. They're not tearing everything down, but they are actively shopping guys who are making a lot of money, and they're gonna try to give some of the young guys in the organization more chances to get starts and get at bats, and they're gonna roll with that and see where that takes them in the future.
Obviously, we look at the whole division. The Pirates, they never pay much attention to. They have a couple of moments during the season. The Cubs, the Cubs are the Cubs. Cincinnati, I thought was going to be better than they were. But the team that we always look at, we look at the Cubs, but the Cardinals. It's the Cardinals that always strike fear in our hearts, because it's like, what are they doing over there? What are you guys going to be doing in the offseason to get better? Because, as I said at the top, JD, this division, the Brewers may have walked away with this division this year, but that doesn't mean you can rest on your laurels at all.
Yeah, it's a very competitive division. Everybody kind of poo-poos on the NL Central every time we start the year, and then they look up and they're like, wow, there's a couple of guys right there. There's two, maybe even three teams who can make the playoffs. In this past year, it was the Brewers who dominated the division. They were clearly the best team. For a lot of different reasons. They just were better. You had a nice mix of veterans and youth on that squad, despite, Corbin Burns going elsewhere, despite having Woodruff not available this year. It was impressive. Like, as an outsider, I thoroughly enjoyed when the Cardinals would play the Brewers. The brand of baseball and how the game was played by the Milwaukee Brewers this year. It was something that I wanted my Cardinals to strive for. Like, I was like, why can't you take at bats like these guys do? It was stuff like that. And, but yeah, when it comes to the division and like who you're paying the most attention to, like you said, you go with somebody who's got a track record. So like, as the Cardinals side of things, yeah, we keep an eye on the Cubs and the Reds, but it's the Brewers. Mariners, who have had the most success, and it's usually the team that they're competing for more times than not for the NL Central crown.
I feel like our organizations have traded spots in that, what you kind of alluded to right there. It's the Brewers are, taking that extra base, playing some smart baseball and doing all the things necessary and not making a lot of errors. You guys kind of are going the opposite. It's weird because we're playing Cardinal baseball kind of.
Yeah, you guys are you're playing a cleaner brand of baseball. You guys do the little things correctly. You play solid defense and you get the clutch hitting. And of course, the pitching has been strong in Milwaukee for many, many years now, and it continues to be a key point for you guys in the success that the Brewers have had this year, where, people in the Cardinals organization that they've expected to step up and take on a role, something like, what Jackson Chourio did for you guys this year, where, he got his chance and he came through and he was a huge piece of the puzzle for the Brewers this year. And the youth for the Cardinals, who they thought they were going to be able to rely on, they're not coming through. And that's kind of makes this front office take a step back. They're like, hold on, something's up. So we're not doing this right, because these are the guys who are supposed to take over. And because they're not, we're shipping them off. These guys are having more success with other teams later on for whatever reason it is. And we're overpaying for veteran guys who aren't living up to expectations. So this model is not working for us. So we need to be more like Milwaukee, where you're not overly paying guys. Like, you're not going to sign Willy Adames this year. You're not going to go out and fork over that kind of money. You're going to find somebody that you have homegrown, and you're going to plug that person in probably. And that's the way you're going to roll. And that's how you're going to find success without having to have a $300 million payroll. So the Cardinals took a look at that. They're like, I like that. I like not having to pay these crazy contracts and still getting the production that we need. So it's very much going to be an overhaul of how they develop players in St. Louis. And they're hoping to have success the way the Brewers have, with guys that they've drafted and developed.
JD, never in my life did I ever think that I'd hear a Cardinal fan say we got to be more like the Milwaukee Brewers. Never.
When you're winning, dude, that's how it works, right? It's kind of like the NFL. If they see something works, it's the copycat league, right? And the Cardinals aren't going to compete with teams like the payrolls of the Dodgers and the Mets and the Phillies and all these others. You're like, dude, we're not gonna be able to. We're gonna have to overpay too much for guys who probably aren't going to pan out the way that we want them to. And we can't afford, or don't want, I shouldn't say can't, because the Cardinals have money. It's not that they don't have the money. It's that they don't want to do business this way. They don't think it's the smart way to do it. And they're changing things. And if they can do it more like Milwaukee and be as successful as Milwaukee has done with it, more power to them. That's what they're hoping for.
Well, JD, I've mentioned this on the show, and I've done this. I want the Brewers to be like the Cardinals in the sense that I want the Brewers to start spending, because your payroll, like 160 or so was like last year, 160 million. The Brewers are paying like around 115 million. So it's like my contention was, how come the Brewers cannot spend what the Cardinals are doing in the offseason? Spend it wisely, but spend some money.
That's the $1 million question, right? It's like, okay, the guys that you're spending it on, they got to work out, right? And looking at some of the contracts that the Cardinals have spent their money on, people are like looking at what happened with Paul Goldschmidt this past year, and they're like, oh my gosh, we just wasted money. And I'm like, not really. I was like, that's what's supposed to happen. You come to the end of the deal, and that's when they tail off, and then you open the door and say goodbye and say thank you for your time. But, like the money that they've spent on a Miles Michaelis and a Steven Matz, guys that just haven't had the production that you want. And that's the risk you take when you give these guys a lot of money and you pay out these long-term contracts. And instead, I'm more of a fan of what Milwaukee did with like the Jackson Chourio. Like, give them do it now, 10 years. Like, this is something we've talked about on Locked On Cardinals, is like maybe think about doing that with Mason Wynn, who's our shortstop, who very much deserved to be right up there in the chatter for NL Rookie of the Year. If they had 4 finalists, I believe he would have been the 4th finalist, but they only have 3 guys who got it, absolutely deserving, not taking anything away from them. But that's how good Mason Wynn was. And we're talking about a guy who's in his early 20s, and why not lock them up? That makes a lot of sense, especially at a position like shortstop.
Well, that's the key is if you think you really have something there. Now they signed Jackson Churio without even him playing a major league inning.
Yeah.
If that would have failed, they're looking at 8 million or 8 years of having to pay that guy for nothing because they've had high prospects fail before. And that's the problem. You better hope that pans out if you do something like that.
That's the thing. You got to have faith in what you do in your own organization. You have to have faith in how you develop people. And the Cardinals at this point do not have faith in that because we have seen different prospects over the years just not pan out or not get enough playing time at the major league level to see if they'll pan out. And then they end up having fantastic years for other people. We're talking about Randy Arozarena, Adolis Garcia. Did they know how good Sandy Alcantara and Zach Gallen were going to be when they shipped him for Ozuna and the deal with the Marlins? And that's what they don't want to do anymore. They're like, they don't feel like they're giving these guys enough opportunities at the major league level to really see if they're good enough. And those are the guys they want to extend instead of going out and paying, 4 or 5 years and $100 million for a veteran who's likely going to tail off and is likely not going to be worth the money that you're actually having to pay for him as a free agent. They want to start relying on their own people again. And that's what used to make the Cardinals a really good organization is they would constantly have prospects coming up. And those were the guys that they would rely on. It wasn't having to go out and buy your team and then supplement that team with your prospects. It's supposed to be the other way around, where you go out and pick a free agent up to supplement all the good people that you've already developed. And it got backwards with the Cardinals. And that's why they're changing things, why we got this reset going on. And I'm on board with it because the model that they had going wasn't working. They haven't won anything in quite some time. So why keep doing it, right?
How big is the gap between the Brewers and Cardinals? We'll get to that coming up next. JD, hang on 1 second. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're joined by JD Hafron from Locked On Cardinals today. And this show is brought to you in part by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book for a reason. Got to love their live betting on FanDuel. You get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Maybe you see, you see the Packers get down 7-0 in the game. And, they were a heavy favorite going in. Well, that's worked. You take the Packers. Maybe like Wisconsin getting down. Well, maybe Wisconsin's a bad example. Maybe you see a really strong football team out there get down early. Well, go to FanDuel and really those live betting. It's got the live stats right there. View all the live play-by-play. And right now, FanDuel Sportsbook gives you everything you need to place your live bets on the NFL in one place. And plus, new customers, you bet $5 and you win that $5 bet, you're going to win $150 in your account. So let's say you go out and place a bet, $5, you win it. FanDuel automatically puts $150 into your account. It's that easy. So you get started. That's for new customers. $150 in bonus bets when you win that first $5 bet. FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Chuck Freimund here on Locked On Brewers, joined by JD Hafron. Well, our teams might be enemies, but at least he and I are friends.
Absolutely.
The media can be friends. It's just that the teams hate each other. I don't know if hate, but is there really that big of a gap, JD, between us and you guys?
My heart wants to say no. The Cardinals underperformed this year, and they should have been better. I look at the Milwaukee Brewers roster, and obviously you've got good players here and there, but it's not like the Dodgers, where there's just 4 MVPs hanging out, with multiple Cy Young type of guy. It's not that extreme. I just think you got more out of guys than I think than the Cardinals got out of their guys is really what it is. I mean, when you have, people are going to say it's an excuse, but I look at what the Cardinals had this last year. And when you have career worst seasons for your 2 best hitters, Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, and you only get half a season from Wilson Contreras. So essentially your 3, 4, 5 guys were MIA last year. You're going to struggle to score runs when that happens. And that was really the problem for the Cardinals this past year, it wasn't really the pitching. The bullpen was really good. It was they could not score enough. They were not coming through with runners in scoring position. One of the worst teams in the league in that category. And I point the fingers right at those three. Like those are the highest paid guys. Those are your veterans. Those are your key dudes. They're supposed to come through, and when they don't, they deserve to be called out. And the one thing about those guys is they all knew it. It's not like any of them were like, well, we're all right. No, they all admitted, like, dude, we suck. Yeah. We've had a terrible year, and it's rough watching guys that, personally you care about, and you see them struggling and they just cannot figure it out. And then to not have any of the young guys like a Nolan Gorman or a Jordan Walker to fall back on, it really, really made this offense challenged. And, I think if you had a normal year from those guys, that the Cardinals could have competed right with the Milwaukee Brewers. I think talent-wise, on paper, I don't see a huge difference. But when you watch those games, it was clear who the better team was every single time we went out on that field.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of. Kind of what you alluded to early on. The Brewers won 93 games, but I feel like they squeezed the juice out of a lot of things this year, and a lot of things went right that you wonder if it's going to happen again the following season. I mean, they had the margin of error is very small with these guys, and some teams, there's margin of error is not so small. You can make some mistakes, and I'm wondering if that's going to happen again this year with the Milwaukee Brewers, and where teams like maybe you guys, like you said, some guys underperformed. And what is going to happen with the first and third base spots now? What's going to happen there?
Well, Paul Goldschmidt obviously is a free agent now. Obviously, there's been some rumors that the Brewers would be interested in talking to him and seeing if he would want to come over, which personally, if Goldie has just a little bit better of a year than what he had in St. Louis, I think you guys would be happy with that, because he's still very good defensively. You guys got, a couple of Gold Glovers in the field already, so you would love to have him over at first base.
Although we got Hoskins, who picked up his $18 million option, so that I don't know if they're going to willing to spend that much money for.
That's true. That's true. I forgot about Rhys Hoskins. I thought he was going to be gone, so maybe that's something you guys would have to worry about. But
I thought about maybe DHing, but I don't think. But with Yelich having to DH sometimes, that's not going to be a possibility. So
yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense then. So probably no Goldie for your future.
Who plays first base?
What's that?
Who plays first base for you then?
Wilson Contreras is going to move over to first base now.
Yeah.
They talked with him. He was a guy. So the high price veterans that the Cardinals, with no trade clauses, that they wanted to talk to was Wilson Contreras, Nolan Arenado, Sonny Gray, and Miles Michaelis apparently had a no trade clause that none of us knew about. But they have had conversations with them going, look, this is the direction we're going as a franchise. We can pay you. It's not that we can't. But if you would prefer to go somewhere else and maybe a club that's closer to winning a championship, then we would be willing to explore the options of moving you. And the reports are that both Wilson Contreras and Sonny Gray have said, we're not interested in that. We want to be a Cardinal. We want to win here. We came here for a reason, and this is where we want to be. We have not officially heard any word from Nolan Arenado yet, but if you read the tea leaves and stuff out there, that the Cardinals were trying to explore things about a certain person that's making a lot of money. Nolan's the guy that most people think is what they've been talking about, where he's at that point in his career where he wants to win a title. I don't know if he wants to sit through a reset, even if it's only a year or two. I think he's got 3 years left on this deal. He makes a lot of money and he wants to go win. So he's going to be dangled out there for the taking for one of those big market, high priced payroll teams. If they're interested, I'm sure the Cardinals will have to eat some money on that one, but he's somebody who's made available. I'm sure Michaelis has been made available. I don't know who would want him. He's been one of the worst pitchers in baseball over the last couple of years. So his $17+ million tag is not going to help causes. So the Cardinals will have to eat some money on that as well. But Wilson Contreras said that I don't want to leave and was willing to move to first base to help out getting the other young catchers that the Cardinals have in their system more at bats. With Wilson out last year, half the season, they got a nice look at Ivan Herrera and Pedro Pages two totally different types of catchers, where Ivan's more of the offensive guy, Pedro's more of the defensive guy. And they were like, look, the pitching staff likes them. Wilson, if you want to stay with us, we're going to need you to do something else for us because we want these kids to play. And he was like, well, I guess we'll move down to first base. So that's the plan right now, is to have Wilson Contreras convert over to first base. And the big question is, can he handle it defensively? Offensively, we're not worried about him whatsoever because he was having a heck of a year despite the injuries. But defensively, it's kind of like, we've had Goldie over there for a few years, and that guy's really good. Is he going to be able to help out this young infield if Arenado is moved? Is he going to be able to help them out over there as a defensive first baseman, or is he going to be a liability? That we don't know yet.
Well, the Brewers have a glaring need for a third baseman. Arenado 5 years ago, I'd take him. I think anybody who trades for him now, I'm just surprised his game has slipped as much as it has.
Yeah, it's not. And the defensive game actually rebounded last year, where in 2023 he really went down a little bit, and then the first half last year it was tough to watch too. And then something clicked, and he was one of the best third basemen in baseball the second half of the season, and ended up being another finalist for the Gold Glove over at third base. So still could pick it with the best of them. Still got a great arm. It's just offensively, it's just the power has just kind of vanished. And when we talk about teams that I think Nolan would be a good fit on, teams like where he doesn't have to be the main guy. Like if he's like the fourth guy in the pecking order, I think would be a more advantageous spot for Nolan Arenado at this point in his career. So Phillies, Houston Astros, something like that. I keep talking about how he would love the Crawford boxes in left field because he's such a pull hitter, like where the power numbers would probably go up substantially if he was to move to a more hitter-friendly ballpark, because Busch Stadium hasn't been all that kind to him. You know, a lot of his balls that would be home runs to left field have been dying at the warning track, and, you know, pitchers aren't pitching him inside all that much anymore. And so he's had to take the singles to right field, which has obviously hurt production and his OPS and his slugging, and they've all taken a dip. I don't think he's that bad of a hitter. I just think in time, as time goes on, it just kind of happens to the guys, you know, that didn't do PEDs. Like, it's just Father Time is undefeated, right, undefeated. Chuck?
Except for guys like you and I.
Yeah.
Except for us guys who watch the team. All right, we come back, JD, one more final segment. We'll talk about the NL Central and see what we'll think about the NL Central. We come back here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Find us on Google, Spotify, Apple, on all the major downloads, every download your podcast. And, of course, on YouTube, our growing YouTube page. Search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. JD, how do they see your smiling face every day?
What was that?
How do people see your smiling face every day?
Oh, well, obviously you can find us on YouTube as well, the Locked On Cardinals, where we're very, very close to 11,000 subscribers now. So we want to keep that churning out. Obviously, you can find me on Twitter X as well at @LO_Cardinals and at JD Sports Radio. So that is where I'm at. I'm not always smiling though, Chuck, because you know, it's been a tough year. It's been a tough year for the Cardinals. Things didn't go quite the way we were hoping they would go. You guys had to be very happy with how things played out. Obviously, playoffs. You warned me, Chuck, and I gave you so much credit. I was like, Chuck warned all of us that the Brewers seem to do well in the regular season, then something happens in the playoffs, and it just doesn't work out. How do you plan on fixing that when you're going to lose a guy like Willy Adames? What direction do you think the Brewers are going to go into to kind of fill that hole? Because that is a lot of production that is going to be missing from that order next year. So who's stepping up for you guys?
It is. And that's why I'm thinking they need a third baseman, because I think Ortiz is going to move over to shortstop from third to short. Played third base out of necessity this year and did a nice job over there. But he's going to move to short, even though there's rumors Terang is going to play short. He'll move to short, and they have to get themselves a third baseman. Right now, that's a big, glaring, gaping hole for the Milwaukee Brewers. And they got to go out and get themselves a guy who can hit some home runs. Replacing 32 home runs is tough. Replacing his leadership is going to be difficult. But this is the way it is with the Milwaukee Brewers. When they get a guy who's at the end of the 6 years, they're going to lose in the free agency. They've taken chances on guys. They've signed Yelich, and it backfired. So far, I feel it's backfired. I feel the organization, if this was the NFL, I think Yelich would have been cut a couple of years ago. That's just the way I think they would have cut the contract. Braun, I don't think they really got another guy who they kept around long-term contract, never really got their bang for their buck after 2011, I want to say. Yeah, he still was a productive player, but he wasn't the great player he was early on. So back to the third base spot is the big spot. This team won all year without a legitimate ace at the top of the rotation as well. They're going to get Brandon Woodruff hopefully back. He's coming back from surgery. I never count on a guy who's coming back from surgery. There's got a crowded outfield. What are they going to do with Devin Williams? There's some big question marks. I love the direction they're going. I think there's a lot to be positive about, but it's not going to be easy repeating as the division champ. Can't just roll out a bag of balls out there and think, oh, the Brewers are going to win it. I think they're going to be one of the favorites. But Pat Murphy even said yesterday when he won the Manager of the Year award, he said, well, we still got some work to do. We got to figure out how a way we can fend off everybody and still win this division again.
Yeah, and you got the Reds are going to be healthier next year. They got Tito Francona coming as their manager, which I think will be an upgrade over David Bell. Mm-hmm. The Cubs, you just don't know what the Cubs are going to do. I don't know what they're going to do in free agency this year. It's kind of up in the air. Do they decide to go and pay a few guys to go along with having to pay Bellinger, who picked up his option? So, you never can really rule them out until you figure out what the heck they're going to do. So I'm not sure yet. I know that the Cardinals they're not prepared to win the division this year by any means. They plan to compete. And they're hoping that some of these young guys like Gorman and Walker and Mason win, and that they all step up to that next level of production this next year. But if it doesn't happen, it's going to be a lot like it was this last year, which is going to be kind of moseying around the 500 mark and hoping for good things to happen. But I don't know. It's hard to look at what the Brewers got and not pick them as the favorite in the NL Central. I'm sure they'll make some sort of smart decision, but considering the great defense that you guys have, which was always very impressive this year, Contreras, obviously a superstar in the making, if not already, depending on who you talk to. So there's a lot of good things about the Brewers right now. And yeah, Woodruff's it's a big question mark because it's not like he's coming off something minor, the surgeries that he's had to endure the last year. They're tough ones, and not everybody bounces back from these things. I know we're used to this day and age where you go into the ninth and everything's fine and you're back, and that's not really the case all the time. You just don't hear about the ones that don't work out as much.
The Cubs, I'm thankful, JD, and I'm sure you are too. Both of us have a common denominator. We hate the Cubs. The common denominator, but I mean, at least they're not spending like the Dodgers would do. I mean, can you imagine if they were like the Dodgers or the Yankees and they just go out and start buying themselves pennants? I mean, thank God the Cubs don't operate that way.
Yeah, and they could if they wanted to. It's not like they don't have the money. Same thing with the Cardinals. And that's what fans are kind of upset about in St. Louis is that your own ownership you're a billionaire, bro. Go do it. But at the same time, buying people hasn't worked out for the Cardinals in the past. It's making smart trades and then extending those guys, guys like Matt Holliday and Jim Edmonds and, trading for Scott Rowland. It wasn't going out and buying free agents is what brought the Cardinals all that success. It's not how it worked. And they're trying to get back to doing it the way that they were successful at in previous years. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
JD, let's keep in touch here in the offseason. We have another common denominator, the Green Bay Packers.
Absolutely, man. Amazing. Another wonderful down for Chicago people, to see that. Have you seen some of the videos of people losing their minds, like Bears fans, after the kick was blocked?
Yeah, that's them.
It's so funny.
You knew that kick was going to be blocked because that's just the way it goes for Bears fans.
Yeah, I was like, he's got to shank this. Something's going to happen. Wow. It's just the way it goes in this rivalry, which is not a rivalry at all when you haven't won and when it's 11-0 over the last few times. So, if there's Milwaukee fans, I'm all on board with the Packers. You've seen the cheesehead and stuff before. I've got it behind me always. And I'm go Pack Go, baby. I hope they can continue to have success and keep Jordan Love healthy. That's a big deal. And stop turning it over, Jordan.
Got a long way to go in that season too. JD, thanks. We'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Yes.
JD Hafron from Locked On Cardinals. Great to have him on this show today. My name is Chuck Freimund. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen to every day. Your second listen, go to Locked On MLB. Our guy Sully has got all the hot stove talk right there. Locked On Brewers. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Have yourself a great week.